Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. That would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Take us back to that night, that Democrat debate. I mean, was it literally, you know what, man, hey, this chica's getting away with too much here, and we got to call her out for it? Or was that just, spontaneous combustion in the moment?
A little bit of both. So first and foremost, as you know, as someone who's worked on these campaigns, any good debate team will have opposition research on everyone in the race. So it wasn't as if Congresswoman Gabbard was dead set on making an example out of Senator Harris. It had nothing to do with, it wasn't premeditated in that respect. And if you'll recall, I believe it was Jake Tapper, who was the moderator, who directly asked Congresswoman Gabbard to comment specifically on Kamala Harris. So it wasn't out of the blue. She didn't pivot off of some other subject and just launch an attack. The great irony behind all of this is that the only Democratic candidate in the race who was willing to publicly defend Joe Biden was Congresswoman Gabbard. She went on CBS News a few weeks prior to those debates and said that Kamala Harris had hatched a political ploy to smear Joe Biden, at best calling him a segregation apologist, and at worst calling him an outright racist. So it boggles my mind how, the media has spun this as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as being, simpatico on their views, when nothing could be further from the truth. But when Jake Tapper gave her that opening to elaborate on those comments, she further exposed the hypocrisy of Kamala Harris. And going into that debate, I believe Senator Harris had peaked in the national polling at around 17%. And in just a few weeks following that exchange with Congresswoman Gabbard, her numbers had sunk to about 5%, and they never recovered. So you draw your own conclusions.
So you let me know in an email. You guys are aware of what shows like this are saying about your candidates and things of that nature. That's part of your job too, to get an idea of what is being fed into the zeitgeist that you're out there trying to message at the exact same time. And so the only thing on our show that we have memory hold is for about 48 hours, I actually believed Kamala Harris, after what I saw her do to Joe Biden, might be the best candidate the Democrats had, meaning that there was such a breathtaking level of shamelessness there that I thought she could actually go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump on that level, because you have to get shameless if you're going to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. We learned this on the Cruz campaign, and our candidate did not like going shameless, which is why we couldn't do it. He wasn't cut out for that. Okay, and so the Democrat nominee is going to have to do some form of shamelessness to do combat with him one-on-one. And so I thought you saw a little bit of that killer instinct in her. And then you saw that when the stage was given to her now, where she had to now be the standard bearer, she could not form a credible campaign. She could not form a cohesive message. She was essentially laughed out of the primary 2 full months before a single vote in Iowa was cast. A lot of people still believe that moment with your candidate, Tulsi Gabbard, was kind of the knife moment there, where that kind of essentially mortally wounded her and she never recovered. When you found out that a woman whose only claim to fame in a presidential election was calling the guy she's about to work for essentially a racist sympathizer, was going to be the VP, your initial reaction to that?
So I have a lot to say about this, so bear with me. I'll try to keep it brief. Normally, a VP nomination is fairly inconsequential in terms of forecasting the policy an administration will take once they're elected into office. With Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, he will be the oldest president ever sworn into the office if he is elected. He will be 78 in January, which coincidentally is the average life expectancy in America. Rasmussen, which admittedly skews to the right by about 5 to 7 points on average, just released a poll this week, I believe, that said 59% of all Americans, not just Republicans, 59% of all Americans do not believe Joe Biden would finish out his first term in the office. So at the bare minimum, we need to take seriously the possibility that the election of Joe Biden could result in the election of Kamala Harris. So what does that mean? My greatest concerns with Kamala Harris are actually not policy-centric. It's much more fundamental than that. The same authoritarian instincts that the national media so frequently assign to President Trump, Kamala Harris not only has those, but she actually knows how Washington works. So not only does she know how Washington works, but she will have an extremely complicit national media who will shy away from scrutinizing her and thus allow all of her overreach to mostly fly under the radar. But I'll get a little more specific for you. With both Brett Kavanaugh and Jussie Smollett, Kamala Harris showed zero regard for due process. And the same can be said for Joe Biden and his accusers on sexual assault. Let's remember, she did not say that the accusers deserve to be heard or that the accusers deserved an investigation. She said, I believe them. So this is a person who will allow her political and personal biases to convict someone before any evidence is made available. So that's one. When the national media rightfully admonished President Trump for suggesting that Judge Muriel could not perform his job because of his Mexican heritage, where was that same outcry when Senator Harris did the exact same thing by suggesting Brian Bouchier could not be an impartial federal judge because of his Catholic faith? Discrimination is discrimination, Steve. We're either opposed to it or we're not. We don't get to cherry pick when we have those ethics. On the campaign trail, she said that she would promise to bypass Congress with executive action to infringe on the Second Amendment. And then once her campaign was on life support, she launched this bizarre attack on Elizabeth Warren, of all people, insisting that Senator Warren take her position that Twitter silenced the President of the United States and ban. Here for a second, Steve. Kamala Harris has no regard for due process, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, or the separation of powers. Now you tell me why the freest nation on earth would ever allow someone with those views anywhere near the presidency.
I got to go here in just a minute, Paul. Do you know how you plan on voting in November yet?
I will keep this brief. I voted for President Obama twice. I just campaigned for a fairly progressive Democratic congresswoman. I intend on voting for the re-election of my district's Democratic Congressman, Mac Rose. Under no circumstances will I be voting for a Biden-Harris ticket this November. That doesn't mean I'm voting for Trump, but I will not be supporting this Democratic ticket under any circumstances.